nowadays, more than ever, you need to have your independence. And it's not meaning that you don't trust your husband or whatever else. But, if you want to have your own little kiddie fun to go and get your nails done and your hair done, I think you should be entitled to that. And I think, the partner really shouldn't have any control over that, but you should have the flexibility to have an open and honest relationship about the finances. It shouldn't be a taboo subject, because I get the feeling that it is a bit of a taboo subject, because the partners like to be able to control everything and think they're doing the right thing, which is great. But I still think you're open and honest in all other areas of your relationship. That's just a part of it as well.
Welcome to Your Second Act, the podcast that proves that life doesn't have to end at 40, 50, or even 60, because when it comes to living your best life, age is just a number. Hi, lovely people. Welcome to another episode. And today it's the Let's Catch Up segment where I discuss topics that matter to me and hopefully to you as well. Today we're tackling the thrilling topic of finances. Now, before you switch off and think she's gone crazy, this is boring, what's that got to do with midlife? Well, just hang on a little bit longer, because I promise this conversation I have with Jacki is anything but dull. And no need to worry, I'm not going to be diving into financial markets and stocks, because let's face it, I'd rather put pins in my eyes because I find that so boring. We're talking about women taking control of their own finances and not leaving it to our partners to administer. I've got to confess that I'm guilty of letting my partner handle the tricky stuff, such as the mortgages and the investments. But after listening to Jacki, who firsthand has experienced financial vulnerability and how she found it really, really hard, even though she did manage all the finances. And that's why you're going to find this interesting, because a lot of us think, oh, well, it's the woman that's left in the dark. But no, she wasn't. It was the fact that he had the control, because most of their finances were in joint names, but he was the primary account holder. So when she tried to set up her own account, she actually found it quite difficult. So I think it's a lesson learned that we need to be all over it. We need to have these conversations with our partners. And there's probably many of you that actually take control of the finances, but I'm talking to some of us who probably don't. And we don't want to leave ourselves in a situation where we're vulnerable, and if our partner was to die or we were to divorce, then what? Then we have to learn all this stuff, as well as dealing with the emotional side of not having them in your life anymore. And I, for one, don't want to go through that. So after this episode, I realised that I've got to step up, I've got to learn, I've got to ask the questions, and I've got to be interested, because this is about my financial wealth as well as his. Anyway, I really hope you're going to enjoy this episode. I know you're going to find it interesting, and you will realise at the end how important it is to have your own personal credit card and bank account. Let's get into it, and I hope you'll enjoy it. At book club the other night, we recently read The Last Victim, which tells the story of a woman who was blindsided and conned out of over 300,000 Australian dollars by someone she thought was her life partner. Now, she trusted him with her life savings to invest on her behalf, but in the end, it went pear-shaped, and it really sparked a great conversation in our book club about how many of us are actually left in the dark and just, I think, take for granted that maybe someone else is doing the finances for us. And when I'm talking about finance, I'm talking about the large stuff like your mortgages, your investments. And I was really shocked when I asked the question that night, how most of us actually said, oh, no, I don't really do that. I leave it up to my partner to do. And you were quite vocal about this, and you had a lot of great advice. And that's why I thought, Jacki, you're the person to come on and let's have this discussion.
Thanks, Michelle.
What are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Well, it was a really good open conversation, and it was quite interesting listening to the other women say what they said, which was, as you just explained, they let their other partner, they do all that. Now, in my situation, I was probably a slightly different, whereas I had a lot to do with the finances within my marriage. And if so, probably more than the average female, I would have to say. But I did find it quite surprising that most of the girls in our book club really didn't have any idea of all the assets and how everything was set up, which to me is now alarm bells, especially for women in our age bracket. But also looking back, I also think that even as a young girl, I always had my own bank account. I always had my own credit card. I think that is exceptionally important and probably even more important today than it was all those years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And it was interesting when you were saying when you became separated from your husband, how even though you were the one doing all the finances, but because his name, he was the primary account holder, you found that you could no longer access these accounts or even try and get your own credit card, which
Yes.
I found that was crazy.
Yeah, and I was lucky because I paid a lot of the bills and I did a lot of that. I was able to put my name as a permissible user on things like the car insurance and the utilities bills and all the rest of it. So even though it was in his name, I did have access to give information or find out information on some of those smaller things. But when it came to things like the home loan, yes, that was a joint home loan. But the first thing I did was ring the bank and put a hold on being able to redraw. Now, I didn't want to think that that's what something I would do, but as these people say, in the first 6 months of a divorce or a separation or whatever, everything is, "Oh, I'll look after you, and the first 6 months I'll do this, and I would never do that." Well, let me tell you, everyone that told me, "Be careful, the first 6 months, there's remorse, this, that, and the other," literally to the day, 6 months, and that was it. The credit card didn't get paid off, nothing. I had no assets, no access to, another credit card because during the course of my, 20-year marriage, I cancelled my own credit card because I thought there's no point paying that joining fee. Yes, he was the primary card holder, but once that got, to its limit because he didn't pay off the balance, I had access to no credit card. Now I went to 3 banks, and one of those banks, a girlfriend worked at a bank where she tried to help me because I was a casual worker. Because even though I'd been working at the same company for 10 years, I had kids that relied on me. I didn't have a full time position. I had no regular income. Do you think I could get a credit card? No chance. Now, I also think that's got to do with the Banking Royal Commission of the years gone by, and they're a lot stricter on that sort of thing. But if there's any advice I would give to a young girl or to a woman in her 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s or 70s, the best thing you can do is to have your own bank account with a little bit of money in it, whether it's, a few hundred or a few thousand or more. You actually need your own bank account. You also need to have access to a credit card because it is a nightmare trying to get a credit card. I finally got one, and let's just say it wasn't very easy, and I was only given a limit of $2,000. Now, for me, I found that really, really humiliating. At the age of 18, oh, sorry, at the age of 21, I was able to borrow money for a mortgage to buy my first property. At the age of 54 or 53, I was in a position where I am unable to get a credit card. It was so humiliating. And for me, that was the biggest wake up factor to my daughter, to any of my girlfriends that had girls in their 20s looking at getting married or girls with boyfriends. You know, they can be quite influential, in those decisions when you're in that environment. And for me, I will always make sure now that my daughter has a credit card of her own and also a bank account in her own name. And I will tell her to never, ever, ever give that up because it has actually been a really humiliating experience having to go to a bank to get a credit card where I've been rejected 3 times. When in the past, I could borrow more money at the age of 21 than I can now, which is so humiliating.
It is. And I think a lot of women find themselves in this position. But I think, you know, to understand why do we get to this point? And of course, you trust, as you should. You should trust your partner, absolutely. Because I could never think of doing something like that to mine. But it's sad you don't know. But I think when I look at my situation, I guess it's because I don't know. Maybe I don't completely understand the whole process of everything that I rely on him because he does. And I think, oh well, I'll just look after the day-to-day running of our finances, but when it comes to investments and mortgages, I trust him.
Mm.
And
But you
that
should be
night,
across that. You really should be across that, whether that's a
yes.
conversation of over a glass of wine or a night out with the 2 of
Yeah.
you for dinner, you actually need
Yeah.
to be across what's going on, because if you're not and things go pear-shaped, it's very hard for you to prove, um, what you own or what you're entitled to, because things can be hidden exceptionally well by doing various things that people can do with trust funds and all that sort of thing. I mean, I'm lucky ours was pretty straightforward. There was nothing, too hard that we needed to sort out, but it was still the fact that I knew more than what he did. And I think in the end that did benefit me somewhat because I knew what I had access to. Whereas for a lot of women, they just don't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just walked away that night thinking, I feel like I know everything, but I don't have complete detail of everything because I'm trusting. But then I thought that's just me being lazy. And I thought to myself, no, I've really got to start taking more interest because you just never know. You have to safeguard yourself. But that's where I think financial literacy, a lot of people aren't and get scared by it. That's too hard. I can't be bothered.
Or it's in you don't wanna be confrontational like that, or to be seen that you
Yeah.
don't trust your partner in doing
Yes.
things that you think he's going to be, or they might be
Yeah.
doing. So,
Of course.
for example, they talk about, and this is all new to me, they talk about financial abuse. Now that is a huge thing, and some of the things that these people do to control their partner is terrible, because you are financially bound to your partner in some way, shape, or form. But if you aren't given access, or if they cut off a credit card or if they cut you off from the bank account, you've got nothing. Now, I'm not saying that he did that, but what I am saying is that I was very restricted because I wasn't set up properly. And what I mean by not set up properly was I still had my own bank account, which was great, and that helped. But me giving up my credit card was a big mistake. And it's something that I had done, 10 years ago. And I wish I never had done that because, again, I could borrow more money when I was 18 than I can at 53 years of age. Had I kept my credit card, I would have had a far greater credit limit, and I also would have been able to have a little bit more of an easy life post, separating from my now ex-husband.
It just blows my mind, though, how I wouldn't say a lot of us, but some of us just don't think about it, don't worry about it.
Mm.
And that
And
night,
that's right. That's what they all said that night. It's not really a major
yeah,
priority for them. And I found that a little bit blasé from them, because if something was to happen tomorrow, now, some of their partners might be really good. Other partners may be the other end of the spectrum, but you should not be putting yourself in that situation. And I still think that a lot of men like to control the finances. I don't know if it's a control thing, and a lot of the women don't want to. They either don't understand it or they don't want to understand it, but they need to understand it because it could end up being a massive mistake.
so how can we change this? How can we safeguard ourselves?
Well, I look, I also think by making people aware of the fact that if separate, divorce from your husband and you don't have a job or your own credit card, if your credit card is linked to your husband's card, there is a big problem right there and then. Because, yes, he is liable for that credit card, but if he cuts it off, you've got access to no credit card whatsoever. And that, when you're needing to go out and set up your new home or do whatever you're needing to do, live, grocery shopping, whatever, that really is helpful to be able to have that. So I think the key thing to do would be to talk to other people about it. And it's not only through separation or divorce that these things happen. For example, another friend of mine, her husband died. So, of course, everything stops. Everything gets kind of paused or whatever. Now, she was lucky. She was in a situation where she didn't have to work. But the problem there lies again was all the funds were frozen. She couldn't get a credit card. So she had to end up going to her accountant to get a letter from the accountant to say, hey, and let me tell you, money wasn't a problem in that situation, but she still couldn't get a credit card because everything had been frozen because he'd passed away. Now, after going through what she'd been through, that's the last thing she needed, was to be in a position where she couldn't get a credit card because everything got shut. So it's not in divorce or separation, it's in other areas of your life as well. If in case there is a death or whatever, you just need to be prepared.
Yeah. And it's true. And it comes back to that trust, that we feel that we shouldn't question it. That,
Yeah.
of course I'm going to trust him and he's going to trust me, but you still have to be smart about it. You do. You have to be informed and you have to safeguard yourself. I think everyone's going to run out after this episode and get themselves a credit card.
Good luck trying to get one is all I'm going to say.
Yeah, but at least they've got time, I guess. But yeah, I just find this whole situation, like I said before, it really has got me thinking more and more about things and not just to take it for granted that someone else is going to fix the issue for me or sign here. That's another one. Just sign here, sign there. I mean, so the book that we read, she's an intelligent woman who was independent and just happened to fall in love with a rotten apple who took her money. And she says, like, I used to hear these stories and think there is no way I would give my money over. And she handed all that money over.
He was very much
That's another.
radar.
Yeah, that is a really, really scary situation that you could trust someone that much to give your life savings over
And that
to.
could
And
be
now,
anyone. That could be someone
yeah,
that you've been married to for 20 years, and for all you know, they could have a gambling problem, or they might have somebody else on the side, or it could be for a plethora of reasons. And that's even more the reason that you need to be prepared. And it's not as if you don't trust your husband, because he has no reason to not to deny you the opportunity. Like, I think everyone should be able to have that credit card or a bank account in their own name.
yeah. But also, everyone should share the workload
Yeah.
of the finances. It shouldn't be left just to one person because sometimes that is stressful. Especially, there's a lot of women that don't even understand where they are financially. They could be in strife and the husband doesn't want to tell them because they don't understand or they don't want to worry them. So again, I know of another situation where this woman was married to this man for 25 years. And in most of their marriage, he was basically borrowing from one bank to another. They were moving countries to get away from debt. And then, of course, it caught up with them. And she had no idea. And again, I'm thinking, how could you not have any idea? But if you don't worry about it and someone's taking care of it, then you wouldn't, would you? You just think,
No.
well, he's doing it all.
And
So
some
again,
of these men are so proud too, and they don't feel as if they could possibly tell their wife that either they've made the wrong decision or
yeah,
they've put money they're spending more than they're earning to try and keep up with the Joneses. There's a lot of that goes on that a lot of people don't realise that is happening, and it's a little bit scary, I have to say.
yeah, it is. A friend of mine who years ago, like 10 years ago, divorced her husband, and he just has never been able to come to terms with it. There is so much financial abuse that he even, like, she has ceased all contact with him, that he still manages through her bank account, his statements. He will, like, deposit $1 and then leave a disgusting message. And it's like, wow, the people are so low. The depths that they will go to try and just destroy somebody else. So I know that the banks are really, cracking down on that type of behavior, but yeah, you've really, really got to be careful. And you've just got to, for yourself, safeguard yourself.
Yeah, and I just still feel as if nowadays more than ever, you need to have your independence. And it's not meaning that you don't trust your husband or whatever else, but if you want to have your own little kiddie fun to go and get your nails done and your hair done, I think you should be entitled to that. Um, and I think, the partner really shouldn't have any control over that, but you should have the flexibility to have an open and honest relationship about the finances. It shouldn't be a taboo subject, because I get the feeling that it is a bit of a taboo subject, because the partners like to be able to control everything and think they're doing the right thing, which is great. But I still think you're open and honest in all other areas of your relationship. That's just a part of it as well.
Yeah, it's so true. And in your situation, you were the one who was dealing with all the finances, and did he leave a lot of it to you?
Yes, yeah. And, I would always, tell him what we were doing, but he didn't really have the interest in it, which
Yeah,
is why I had
yeah,
to do it in the first place, because I found that bills weren't getting paid, and
right.
we were getting late fees, which I hated paying for late fees. So
Oh,
I ended up, doing all the life admin purely because I wasn't working full time. And I always have had a job. I've worked for a long time. I've always contributed, but I was
yeah,
always quite transparent in how everything was, the lay of the land. But I will say that, for example, when we divorced or separated and were going through it, I told him numerous times to change his address, because he no longer lived here anymore, and to change his address. But because his life admin was so bad, I was getting statements that I could use to my advantage because he hadn't changed his address. So I was able to provide documents to the lawyers to say, he's only declared this amount, but look, this is how much is really in that superannuation fund, or, you know, so basic life admin wasn't done on his end, which unfortunately, I think he lost out a little bit in the end because of that. Because I would have trusted what he had said, but because I was having documents sent to my house and I'd asked him numerous times to change his address, I thought, well, if you can't even do that, change your address, I'm going to use that information to my advantage.
fair enough.
And,
And I wonder,
yeah.
I was going to say, I wonder because of that, now has he changed his ways?
Oh, no, I'm still getting mail to this day.
Really?
Mhm.
God.
Yeah. No,
Wow.
unfortunately, let's just say I don't think his credit rating's gonna be very good.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's not
Mm.
your issue
No,
anymore.
that's right,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm not the EA anymore.
No, no, that's right. You're your own EA, and
Yes,
that's how it
correct.
should be.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think I love, your word of advice is to have your own credit card, to have your own bank account. And actually, you should both have your own little bank accounts separate. That you can do what you like with that. And I know couples that have their own accounts and they both pay half the mortgage and do that. And that works for them. When I heard that, I thought that is so weird because we just share everything in one pot. But hey, whatever works. But you should always have access to everything. And if you don't, get access to it. And like you said, have that conversation with your partner.
And it
It doesn't
shouldn't be
mean you don't trust him.
confrontational. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
confrontational, or it shouldn't be
Yeah.
that you don't trust him. It should be that you just like to know the lay of the land. Because if something even ever happened down the track and you've got no idea where everything is, it just makes, not only are you dealing with that, but you're also dealing with the fact that you don't know where anything is. So, yeah, definitely you should have a good understanding, or even if it's a basic understanding of where things are at, would make your life a whole lot easier.
Absolutely. And I think we have to educate our daughters, like you said.
Mhm. The independence, and being able to manage their own finances and be comfortable managing their own finances, not letting someone take control of it. Now, look, some
Oh,
people are far better at that than others, whether that's women or men or vice versa.
yeah.
All relationships are different, but I still think that, and even for my sons, the same thing. I want them to be able to manage their money and do things the right way rather than be relying on someone else. But I think traditionally speaking, times have changed and it's sort of meant to be equal now. And I think a lot of women do contribute to the home in all different ways, financially and also on home duties, etc. But with that said, I still think we need to be able to be quite open and transparent about all the finances so that we all know where things are at and, whether it's opening up your bank account or getting a credit card or making sure your will's up to date, all those sorts of things are really
That's
important.
another thing, very important.
Mhm.
Because some people don't update them, and then
And that's a big
something
problem.
happens, it's like, "Oh, but yeah, things have changed
Yeah. So
since
that's
then."
not
So
my
you're
necessary
right.
things to do, which is a bit confrontational, but you have to do these things. So,
Yeah. Well, we've got to be real, don't we? We just can't bury our heads in the sand. These are important aspects of your life, and we all need money. So, and it's about money. So, yeah, definitely. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for coming on and just, talking about it, because I really do believe it's a topic that a lot of us don't want to talk about because we find it uncomfortable or we don't understand. So, if this sparks something in someone's head to say, well, yeah, maybe I need to have this conversation, then great.
yeah, even if it's a couple of people or someone said to you, "Oh, that was such good advice," or "I should really do that," we just need to make sure that they do it. And here's one for your next, podcast.
Yeah.
And that is, where do you put your ashes or what happens when you die? You need to have that conversation
Yeah.
because where you
But
think
it's
you want
true.
it's true. Where you think you want your ashes might be different to where they might think your ashes go. So I've
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
a conversation with my parents about that, and I feel a sense of relief that we're both on the same page. But until next
Awesome.
time, that's your next podcast.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Your Second Act. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could rate and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to me.